The room with two names. I work the night desk at a boutique hotel where the carpets swallow sound and the elevators sing like they've forgiven you. The place is a theater that never closes. When the sun slips into the river and the lobby switches from coffee to gin, I begin to belong to the building in a way daylight never lets me. Ava, my wife, sells houses the way a violinist convinces wood to change its mind. She can take a room with 3 bad decisions and make it feel like your next chapter. When we met, she said she loved my schedule because it meant the city belonged to us in shifts, like we were sharing an invention. That felt romantic before it felt lonely. The first sign didn't wave. It breathed. Housekeeping brought me a lost and found tray at 2 in the morning, phone chargers, 1 silk scarf, a cufflink engraved with either initials or a brand that wanted to be your friend. On top was a small hair tie, blue silk, with a tiny gold clasp. Ava keeps her hair in a loose knot when she's working, a quick twist that says she's listening. Her ties are the cheap black kind you can buy by the hundred. I don't think I'd ever seen her wear silk anything above the neck. But the blue looked like her, like a version of her that tried on risks behind a different door. Room, I asked. 417, the housekeeper said, reading off the tag. Checked out at 11, 2 guests. Champagne at breakfast, you know. She said it the way you say rain. I slipped the scrunchie into my pocket and told myself it was a coincidence that knew my name. 417 has a view of the river and a mirror that makes people feel interesting. Our hotel has a secret bar too, because of course it does. Behind a velvet curtain beside the service corridor, there's a narrow room dressed like a memory. Low lights, records, a long couch that teaches you how to sit closer without complaining. Guests whisper about it like they discovered it, and I let them keep the story because it's cheaper than comp drinks. Ava texted me later that day. Client dinner ran over. Don't wait up. Save me the last slice of lemon tart. Lemon tart is her way of apologizing without acknowledging the crime. I wrapped it in plastic and pushed it to the back of our fridge where guilt goes to cool. The next Thursday, I saw her in the lobby mirror without seeing her in the lobby. There's a thing the glass does at night, bending the room into a kind of paragraph. If you stand behind the pillars, you can watch people read themselves in the reflection. I saw her feathered bangs, the pearl stud at her right ear, the knuckle of her thumb worrying a seam in her coat. She wasn't alone. A man I'd later learned to call Damien stood half a step too near, shaped like a decision you don't say out loud. He kept his face angled away from the desk, as if anonymity were part of the service. Ava's smile was small, the sort she wears for expensive furniture. She touched his sleeve like people in ads touch coffee cups. I told myself it was business and invented a reason to check my inventory. The inventory didn't need me, but the lie did. The email arrived 2 hours later from an address that was either a burner or a dare. Doyao know about Thursdays at something. No subject line, just a photo attachment. In it, Ava and Damien were stepping into the staff stairwell. The angle said the photographer was tired of being patient. In the corner of the frame, a blue silk scrunchie sat around Ava's wrist like a ring that couldn't decide. I didn't respond. I printed the photo and slid it into my jacket pocket beneath the blue silk and kept working the desk like the city still depended on me for room keys. The lobby was quiet by 3, mostly insomniacs and a couple that preferred the idea of sleep to its practice. That's when she walked in Myra. I didn't know her name yet. I only knew she moved like a person who has survived her own taste. "Is the bar still open?" she asked, not whispering but not waking anything up either. "For good reasons," I said. "Do you have one?" "I have 2, she said, easing onto the stool at the far end. One of them is honesty. The other is a mistake I'm not ready to make twice. I poured her a tonic with lime and a thin ribbon of cucumber because she looked like the kind of person who wants complexity without sugar. She studied the glass the way you look at an exit you might take. "Do you ever get used to how much can happen in a building like this?" she asked the bar, not me. "No," I said, which was true, "but I've learned to narrate it." She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her softened as if my face had finished a sentence for her. She slipped a photograph across the bar. It was grainy, printed from a phone. Ava and Damien again, the stairwell again, the blue silk like a flare again. "My friend took that," she said. "She thinks she's helpful." "Who are you?" I asked, though my skin had already returned the answer. "His wife," she said, lifting the glass. "Separated technically, but separation doesn't mean I misplace my eyesight." We sat inside the warmth of that ugly sentence. She told me her name and her rules. Never chase someone who enjoys running. Don't turn your pain into a broadcast. Reserve forgiveness for people who ask for it properly. "What do you want to do?" she asked finally. "I want to do nothing I'll need a lawyer for," I said, half smiling. "And nothing that humbles me more than the truth already has." "There's a third option," she said slowly, and I could feel the floor tilt. "We don't perform, we don't trap. We simply arrive together where they're used to being unobserved, and we turn on the light." "Room 417, I asked. She nodded. "Thursdays." I could feel my heart practice leaving. "We won't have to look long," I said. The week stretched like gum. I worked and she slept in shifts. Ava came home with laughter in her pockets and placed it carefully on our dresser. We kissed with politeness and exchanged schedules with the sincere bureaucracy of people who share a calendar and a bed. I didn't show her the fode or the blue silk, not because I'm noble, but because I wanted the scene in my head to be the last time I told this particular story. Wednesday night, I slipped the blue silk into a small envelope with a key card. I wrote 417 for the woman who leaves beautiful things behind on the front. It felt like the kind of theater our lives had earned. I left the envelope at the front desk for Ms. Ava Martin, with a note that the sender preferred to remain charmingly anonymous. Myra would be in the bar at 9. We'd wait across from the elevator bank where the mirror could keep us company. I felt like a detective and a coward, and something like a man again. When she arrived, she wore a black dress with a neckline that made architecture proud and boots that spoke softly. She smelled faintly of orange peel and a book you love but don't annotate. "If we're caught," she said, "we don't raise our voices. We let the room do the work." "What if the room refuses?" I asked. "Then it's just another room we won't live in," she said, and took my arm. Her hand settled in a way that asked without begging. I didn't shake. Ava came in at 9:17, punctual as a confession. She looked around the lobby like she was rehearsing sincerity, then asked for the envelope. The clerk, my friend Jorge, who knows everything and keeps it, handed it over with a face that said nothing at all. She read the note, smiled a private smile I recognized from our first months, and tucked the keycard into her clutch. Damien arrived minutes later, all cologne and caution, the kind of man whose wristwatch had a biography. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The elevator doors closed politely around them. I could see our reflections in the mirrored steel, me, jaw set, Myra, composed and luminous. We didn't look like accomplices. We looked like people whose bodies remembered hope. We didn't sprint. We started down the service stairs at a pace the building approved of, 3 flights, the handrail steady beneath my palm. My pulse filled the stairwell with drums. On 4, the corridor stretched long and beige. I could hear voices, Laughter pitched low, a door whispering shut. My keycard could open 417, but that wasn't the point. I knocked the way a late room service tray knocks. The peephole darkened. The security latch slid. Ava opened the door and all the air changed hands. I've lived in this face for years, and I have never seen it look so suddenly unarmored. Her eyes darted from my shoulder to Myra's mouth to the envelope on the dresser where she'd placed it like a favor. Damien stood behind her with a bathrobe tied too carefully. The room smelled like the kind of perfume that believes in itself and the bite of cold champagne. Ava found her voice first because of course she did. "What are you doing here?" she asked, and the question tried to assemble itself into outrage and failed. "Returning something that belongs to both of us," I said. "The light." Myra stepped closer, past the threshold but not into the room. She looked at Damien as if he were a word she'd learned to pronounce and decided to abandon. He stared back and then away, into the mirror that hangs above the minibar, into a version of himself even he couldn't sell. "This isn't what it looks like," he said blandly, and I almost laughed because sometimes clichés show up because they can't bear to be alone. Ava's gaze fell to my hand. I hadn't realized until then that I was holding the blue silk scrunchie like a talisman. I set it gently on the dresser beside the envelope. "You dropped this," I said. She closed her eyes the way people do when they're preparing not to cry. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and it was not for me or because of me. It was because her reflection had caught her reaching. "We're leaving now," Myra said calmly to no one in particular. "The rest is choreography, lawyers, leases, a controlled burn of our social media. But the dance is over." No one argued. We turned, the hallway patient as we walked it, the carpet absorbing the words we didn't say. In the elevator, Myra stood beside me without leaning. Our shoulders knew better. We reached the lobby and the piano player lifted his fingers from the keys for a moment as if the song had admitted something. Outside, winter had left a single line of rain along the curb, as if the sky had been writing to someone and lost interest. We stopped beneath the awning, the city generous with its distance. Myra looked up at me and there was something like gratitude in her face, unadorned. "Does your hotel serve a victory drink?" she asked. "We serve a relief drink," I said, "and a beginning." We walked back inside to the velvet curtain. I switched on the small lamp behind the bar that makes the room look like a secret someone told you on purpose. We sat close, but not close enough to build an alibi. I poured something that smelled like vanilla learning to behave. We drank in quiet and let the building settle around us. "I don't want to be anyone's revenge," she said after a while, "including my own." "I don't want to be a reaction," I said. "I want to be a choice." The music from the lobby seeped in, gentle jazz that forgives a few things. Our knees touched in the kind of accidental way that stops being accidental if you let it. We didn't pull back. She traced the rim of her glass with one finger, then set it down. Her palm found my wrist, light as breath, as if she were teaching me something about pulse. We kissed like two people who wanted to see if their mouths spoke the same language. It wasn't urgent. It was intentional. Her lips were warm and curious, the kind of kiss that chooses its own tempo. When she drew back, she stayed close enough that I could feel the echo, the way a room remembers a song after the band packs up. Her hand slid to the back of my neck and stayed there, not owning, just knowing. "You smell like rain," she said, smiling into it. "You smell like citrus and good decisions," I said. We laughed softly because even our jokes were careful. We didn't go upstairs. We didn't invent a room with another name. We walked the empty hallway that connects the velvet bar to the service door and stood with our coats on, looking at each other with the relief of people who have decided to complicate their lives in the right direction. "I'm going to sleep at my sister for a while," I said. "Tell Ava we'll meet in daylight somewhere with ugly chairs." "I'll tell Damien he can stop pretending we're the same person," she said. We stood with the cold at our backs, the warmth of the bar at our fronts, and the truth somewhere between, perfectly balanced like a coin that hasn't decided which face to land on. I lifted a hand and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She closed her eyes and leaned into the touch just a fraction, enough for my chest to learn it. "May I see you tomorrow?" I asked. "Yes," she said, "but let's not rush the audition. I want to know who we are when we're not bleeding." "Me too," I said. "I'd like to be someone I don't have to explain." She kissed my cheek, a simple press that carried heat and intention, and then she stepped into the night that didn't need my permission. Back at the desk, the hours resumed their shape. I watched a couple argue with kindness, watched a man teach his little girl how to press the elevator button with ceremony, watched a group of friends fall in love with their own conversation. I thought about blue silk, how it can lasso a week and drag it into the light. I thought about rooms and their names. Most of all, I thought about the way Myra's breath had synced with mine for a moment and how nothing about it felt borrowed. At dawn, I walked the quiet hallway of the fourth floor and paused outside 417. Housekeeping carts lined the wall like parked ships. I didn't open the door. I didn't need to. Some rooms become museums the instant the story leaves. When I finally lay down at home, Ava was already gone. She left me a note beside the lemon tart container. "We'll do this gently." There were no hearts, no flourishes, just pen on paper, a promise to treat the ruins with care. I showered and watched the steam write forgiveness on the mirror, temporary and true. I tied back my hair with a black elastic and slipped the blue silk into the back of a drawer, not as evidence, not as a trophy, as a reminder that I've learned to tell the truth with the lights on, that I can want without stealing, that sometimes the sexiest thing is the exact distance between two honest people on a couch. At the hotel that night, I turned on the small lamp behind the velvet curtain a little earlier than usual. The room looked ready, like a story you can tell without changing the facts. When Myra walked in, she didn't sneak. She took the stool at the end and rested her elbows on the bar, sleeves pushed up, gaze steady. I set a glass down between us that didn't need a label. Outside, the city rehearsed its neon. Inside, our knees found each other again, and the world for once didn't flinch.